let's get into it.
The problem is that the media landscape is changing so rapidly. You can't keep up with it. I remember when BuzzFeed was just something I did in college around 2 a.m. It's true.
It is true. It is true. Thank you, Mr. President. Let's actually do a show of hands. How many people, I hope everybody knows BuzzFeed, how many people were on BuzzFeed a year ago? 2 years ago? How many are on now? All right, still a few hands we've got to get up in the air. But the reality is that the media landscape has changed so much of what Gary talked about, being invited in. How are we, thinking about content for 24 months from now? That's the way that BuzzFeed thinks. This is BuzzFeed. For those who don't know it, you should definitely check it out. Here's just a lovely graph on our growth. 85 million uniques last month, 200% year over year. We are growing because we are telling stories in a new way, telling stories that thinks about distribution. I agree and I disagree a little bit with what Gary said. My thought is content is king, but distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. You've got to understand great content is the base. That has to work. But beyond that, understand the distribution channels. And he's fully right. What works on Pinterest does not work on Facebook necessarily, and it's totally different on Twitter, and we'll get into it. So I'm not sure if I'm a shaker, but I'm definitely a mover, so I want to see everyone, so I'm going to keep moving. The digital world has moved from portal to search to social. Social is the starting point. By a show of hands, how many of you sleep with your phones on your nightstand? Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up if it's your alarm clock. More hands go up. That's amazing how that works. Now, it's like you were embarrassed at first, but now it's okay. How many of you will check either before you fall asleep or before you get out of bed in the morning, your phone? How many of you, that's everybody, how many of you will actually think to go to like Google, where I, full disclosure, spent 7 years working? Will you think to, oh, what am I going to Google right now? Probably not. You're probably going to social. About.com, I don't think they get enough credit at being a really powerful media company in the search age. You couldn't do a search for anything on Google without an About.com story coming up in the first page, right? They figured out SEO. They figured out how to do it. With this as the starting point, things are completely different, right? You are not Googling whatever, what should I think about in the morning? You're checking your email, you're checking out Twitter. What did people do last night on Tumblr? You're looking at Pinterest. This is what we're doing. This is the starting point online. How are we getting our message across on these platforms? Well, first look at your own feed, right? That's Boo the dog, by the way. We'll talk more about animals. They're very important. Look at your feed. Your feed's going to have pictures of your nieces, of your nephews, of your friends' kids, right? You're going to have your political friend who's talking about what's new in politics. Your friend that's really concerned about Syria will be there. You're going to have your friend that thinks that they're funny telling a joke. You're going to have someone else posting something else. Never before have we consumed content of all different kinds right after each other, right? Think about the newspaper. The newspaper says this is the front section. This is news. Right? This is the business section. This is business. This is sports. This is sports. This is arts and leisure. This is something else. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where all different kinds of content is coming together at once in one feed. It's okay to laugh. You are as likely to see this in your feed as you are this. And it's okay and normal, because we are human beings, as Gary pointed out, to like both, to be interested in both. The reason this works is because publishing and content today is like a Paris cafe. So let's all get on a plane and go to Paris, and we're sitting at a cafe, right? And we're sitting down, we're having a glass of wine. We've got Sartre, we've got our philosophy, we've got Le Monde, the news. We're really serious, right? Someone sits down next to us, and it's more fun if they're attractive. So you flirt, you gossip, you tell a joke, you're sort of making small talk. You bend down to pet their dog, because of course they're going to have a dog. You've turned your back on news and philosophy, right? But you're not dumb, you're human. We can care as much about news and philosophy as we can about the dog, and it's okay. You would never think to go to a cocktail party and say, I'm just going to talk about myself the whole time, right? And if you did, you'd never be invited back. We are humans. We are interested in a lot of different things. Social, digital today has allowed us to talk about all different kinds of things at once. And that's why at BuzzFeed we'll publish this, right? At the same time, we'll talk about Miley Cyrus's thing at the VMAs, and we'll talk about Syria. And you know what? The same person will be interested in both. You look at the 1960s and 70s when the New York Times circulation of the paper went up. Why did it go up? Did they start doing better reporting? No, they started with an arts and leisure section, a dining out section. Science Times, they started doing other things that people were interested in. Because it's not just about news, it's also about being entertained. So at BuzzFeed, we're expanding our coverage. We're doing everything. We have a great new world section where we have at least half a dozen foreign correspondents in places like Cairo and Istanbul, London, all around the world. But we're also doing things like DIY. You know, some of the more traditional publishers will ask, well, gosh, how do we get a younger audience? You know, our audience is getting really old. And you say, well, your travel section in your publication is talking about an $8,000 safari to Namibia. You want to get 22-year-olds? You think they give a shit? I had to throw one swear in after Gary. You think they give a shit about this $10,000 trip? No, it's the most indebted generation in the history of Americans. They don't care about that. It doesn't mean anything to them. It doesn't resonate with them at all. DIY hacks about how to make your life better? Talk to me about that. That's something interesting. How am I being entertained? I'm being entertained by Beyonce's incredible dance moves. But Buzz reads. We have a long read section, 5,000, 6,000 word stories. Things about like growing up in Juarez, Mexico, the most dangerous city in the world. What's that like? That's important. So we've been able to crack this code about how to create content that people want to consume, but also want to share. The reading of an article on BuzzFeed is just the first step. The most important step is going onto your favorite network and sharing it, because the peer-to-peer influence and the recommendation is incredibly powerful. Because of this, right? We used to live in the broadcast model world. You get home, 6:30, you watch the nightly news, you know what people are talking about. Now we live in this social web model. You have these concentric nodes of people that are passing around information. Anybody with a Facebook account or a Twitter account are as likely to get something seen across the web as the nightly news used to be. It's really, really powerful and changed. And what this means is that we can do word of mouth. From a marketing perspective, word of mouth marketing, there's never been a better tool. We can now do this at scale, at internet scale. Word of mouth marketing at internet scale is possible. Laugh, please. That's funny, right? What is this? A fat dog. What kind of dog? A basset hound. What's that basset hound doing? Running. Everybody awake here? Those are basset hounds running. How many of you woke up this morning and said, you know what I need to see in my day today? I'm going to come to 99U. I'm going to get this real great education. Gosh, I really want to see some basset hounds running. If you did, we should talk. You probably need to be working at BuzzFeed. Nobody thinks, like, wakes up in the morning, oh, gosh, look at that. That's really amazing. I need to see 22 more pictures of this. But when you see this in your Facebook feed, when your friend passes this to you, if you don't laugh, if this doesn't evoke some sort of emotion, you are the robot that Gary talked about. You are not human, right? So let's look at this piece of content, basset hounds running. It is incredibly simple. It is pictures of basset hounds running. They do amazing things, by the way. This launch, these numbers are old because this continues to drive traffic, because this is the kind of content that can live forever, right? You're having a really bad day, you can sort of remember you saw this and you will Google, gosh, so those basset hounds, what does that look like? And it will give you a smile. Your friend is having a bad day, you can pass them this piece of content. Or another post we did was like, if you're having a bad day, think about these people. And one of the posts was, you know, if Britney Spears can survive 2007, you can get through this day. So let's look about, that's a little bit, this is the art. Now let's look at the science. A couple weeks after this launched, 386,000 views to this piece of content. 12,000 of those views came from people on BuzzFeed.com seeing it. 374,000 of those views came from social. Came from someone saying, oh my God, this is too funny, I have to share this, going to Facebook. The number in the red box, 33x, that's the number we care most about. That's the social lift. How often is a piece of content reproduced across the social web? 33 times more people came across this piece of content coming in through social than they did on BuzzFeed. And look where it came from. Got a little pointer here. The number one referral, StumbleUpon. StumbleUpon picked this up. It went viral, so to speak. 95,000 people from Facebook, right? This is a lot of what Gary talked about. You don't do the same thing on different platforms. 5,500 people, 5,500 out of 374,000 came in via Twitter, right? Different platform works differently. I talked about this, Surviving Juarez. 5,000 word story on Surviving Juarez, growing up in Juarez, Mexico. Look at this, shares differently, right? Everybody thought long-form journalism was dead. Digital had killed it. No, 150,000 views to this in the first 2 weeks. I don't think it's dead. But look, more people came to this from BuzzFeed than they were referred in via the social web. Maybe not surprising. But look where they came from. Direct. That's dark social. That's email, IM, third-party widgets that you can't track. Longform.org. Blogs pick this up. Long-form blogs pick this up. Twitter, 5,000, 5,200. The last one had 5,500,000 people come to a piece of content via Twitter that had almost 390,000 people total. This is a lot lower number, but almost the same exact from Twitter. This is Twitter content. Basset Hound's running is Facebook. Social storytelling meets video. Now, anyone can be a producer. You can have something like 100 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube every minute. I mean, it is absolutely insane. You can tell your story now in sight, sound, and motion, and you have a distribution platform built in with hundreds of millions of eyeballs. Some of the stuff that BuzzFeed has done, how to piss off every New Yorker in 36 seconds. If you haven't seen it, you should. We do a True Facts series, True Facts on the anglerfish, the most misunderstood fish in the sea. 12 million views. A story about the anglerfish. It's storytelling meets sight, sound, and motion with the ability of social for content to spread. And we've done partnerships with CNN, BBC, and CNBC because they have said, how do we do it? How do we create content? Somebody asked this earlier about, do you start with the long form piece and then cut into short form? We take the other approach. We take a short form piece, cut it up. If you're interested, you can go and watch the 2-hour documentary on animals on BBC. Okay, so if content is social, ads can be too, right? We went from portal to search to social. It's now banner, paid search to social content when it comes to an ads perspective. You can tell a story. A brand can tell a story. It can be genuine, authentic, and meaningful, right? Gary talked about the stats on clicking on banner ads. You're more likely to summit Mount Everest than you are to click on a banner ad. It's it's impossible to tell a story in that real estate. BuzzFeed does social content. We create content for brands where we help tell their story. So how do we do it? Prius is a hybrid car, right? Hybrids weren't seen as very cool when this first came out. So what about the 20 coolest hybrid animals? Liger, Donkra, zebra. These are real animals, by the way. Who knew? How about telling the story about the 20 most scenic drives in America? You know what's interesting about all those drives? They're a long way between gas stations. You know what that means? You should have a hybrid car. Think about telling the story of your brand in a different way, in a way that resonates with people, with humans. GE is timeless technology. How many of you have ever bought an aircraft engine online? How about a locomotive? That guy did. I want to talk to you afterwards, right? GE, most of their products you don't even buy online, right? But they are about timeless technology. So what do? They took over BuzzFeed. And we created pieces of content for them for every decade from 1890 when they were created, actually all the way back to medieval times and prehistory. This is an example from the 1950s. Content like a man's life in the 1950s was not easy. The ad unit here was their original ads from the 1950s. Right? It's telling the story that GE has been timeless in efficiency since creation. My favorite one of these, incidentally, which is still available if you go to the rewind section, which is our nostalgia vertical, all about growing up in the 80s and 90s. You can still play with this. The best 3 photographs from 1890. You click on it and it says, the only 3 photographs from 1890. Okay, so now's the fun part. This is when I'll tell you to take out your pencils. How do you do it? What makes social content? How do you do this for yourself, for your brands, for what you're working on? Have a heart. Emotion is key, and positive emotion is better than negative emotion. Have a heart. Content is about identity. What's wrong with this picture? Let's talk louder. 10% of this audience, including myself, should know what's wrong with this. They're only right-handed desks. How many of you are left-handed? Wow, a lot. I'm not surprised because it's associated with extreme intelligence. 4 of the last 5 US presidents have been left-handed. You can guess who wasn't. This sucked. You go into college and there are only right-handed desks and you have to write like this. You have to sit like this. If you're left-handed, if you're right-handed, think about what it's like trying to write left-handed in a 3-ring binder. You lose about 3/4 of the page. It's impossible. This is a piece of content we did, the 18 reasons it's hard to be a lefty. About a month ago, it was International Left-Handers Day. You righties wouldn't know about it, but this story that was 2 years old started to get traction again because it's about identity. People passed it to me because they know I'm extremely intelligent and left-handed. I pass it to my father, my friends who are left-handed. You want to talk about this stuff. It's about identity, having emotion. Capture the moment. Anybody in the marketing world is going to talk about Oreo, right? In the Super Bowl tweet. People know what I'm talking about, I assume? The only reason Oreo could do that is they had taken their 100th anniversary was that year. For 365 days, they had created a new piece of content that was on-brand message, capturing what was hot on the web at the time. The 372nd day of that campaign happened to be the Super Bowl. The lights happened to go out. It was muscle memory. The only way they were able to understand how to capture the moment, take advantage of what was happening, was because they were doing it the whole time. You have not heard of any of the 365 pieces of content they created, except the one that came on the 372nd day. Enough said. It's actually vital to understand animals, cats more than dogs, are vital to the social web. It's not a joke. It is true. To understand how content spreads, look at cats specifically, less so dogs. I happen to be a dog person, which is why I put this in. Humor works. For those that can't see it, this printer is now called Bob Marley because it's always jamming. Wish I had thought of that. But it works, right? It's funny. You want to pass this along. You want to be the one on Facebook to show you're funny. You don't want to be the 5 millionth person to retweet something, right? And if you look at how content spreads on platforms, breaking news works amazing on Twitter. But Twitter lasts for about 2.5 hours, content. Someone tweets, they've got a lot of followers, it gets retweeted, it spikes. As quickly as it goes up, it comes back down because it's in the moment. It's about timeliness. Facebook is more about emotion. Facebook could take 2, 3, 4 days for a piece of content to get picked up, but as Gary says, he knows he's going to see it later. It could last for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks on Facebook. Pinterest could take 6 months to drive traffic to a particular piece of content. It could last for 2 years. The platforms are different. Understand how content travels across it. Nostalgia. People love being reminded of something from days of old. Saved by the Bell in this example. Do this. Close your eyes and think about Play-Doh. The stuff you play with as a kid, not the Greek guy, right? Think about the smell of it, right? It brings you back to something. Hopefully they're good memories. If not, you should talk to someone. Don't ignore mobile. Over 50% of BuzzFeed's traffic is mobile and growing. Don't ignore mobile. For something to work across the social web, it has to work on mobile. It has to be a seamless experience, right? That Standing in line, think about the board in line network. Hundreds of millions of people who are waiting in line at 8:30 in the morning at Starbucks. They want content to snack on while they're waiting for their latte to be done. It makes something you'd be proud to share. We never ask a question, would we want to share this with our friends? Ask yourself that question while you're creating a piece of content. Don't do things that are embarrassing. This is Scarlett Johansson. There were leaked photos of her on the web. I didn't see anybody on Facebook say, hey, here there are like leaked photos of Scarlett Johansson. I've got time this weekend. Can someone send them to me? Nobody said that. They will Google the hell out of it, but they will not share it because people can be embarrassed by it. Okay, so here's what to remember. The starting point online is social. That's what we're doing. That's where we're starting. The feed has allowed us to consume what we want, when we want, all different kinds of content, all at once mumbled together. Word of mouth marketing, word of mouth at internet scale is now possible. Content is king, distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. Understand each network and why and how they're different. And with that, if it doesn't spread, it's dead. Thank you.